Evening. Welcome, Monica, Sagarika. Welcome, Dr. Anshul, Bharti, Shrishta. Am I audible and visible to all of you? Please give me a thumbs up if you can hear me clearly and if I am visible to you. Okay, so come fast, Dr. Ranjita. Sai, welcome to class. So I hope you all are enjoying my classes. Please let me know if you like my classes or not. So Anshul, Shashank, I hope you all are enjoying my classes. Okay, so welcome Sunil. Okay, so for those who are attending my class for the first time, so I'm Dr. Cheshta Agarwal, your dermatology educator on Unacademy. And right now we are going through a flashcard series on dermatology. Here I'll tell you all the important points related to your dermatology aspect. And these classes are free for everybody. Okay, so you can ask your friends also to join because they are completely free. We have, I think, in total 15 classes on the flashcard series, especially of dermatology. Here we will discuss mainly about the important topics of the dermatology. That is little bit in a brief. And I am right now conducting a plus course also for all those who have already got subscription. So I want all of you to please get the subscription of Unacademy and please use my code, that is Cheshta10, CHESTA10, to get additional discounts. Okay. And I have also started a Telegram group. I think most of you are already on my group, but those who have not yet joined my group and also my Telegram channel, I am posting the link on the chat section. So I am posting it. I've pinned it also. So Sai, it's the case series. The course is going to be launched, I think, by tomorrow or by day after tomorrow. So I want you to please come and join my classes. There I will tell you each and everything in detail and with respect to the case scenario. Because nowadays we are seeing that the questions, especially in your AIMS exam and your even NEET PG or PG exams, they're giving you the case-based scenarios. So it is very important to put all this knowledge into your practical aspect so that you can easily solve the case based questions. Okay, so please come, do join my plus course, use my referral code, that is Cheshta10. And please, if you have any doubt, you can anytime ask me on my Telegram group. I'm available there all the time. I give you questions also, some images also, and some daily important high yield notes also. Okay, so you want me to start, or you have any doubts related to the basics which we have studied yesterday and day before yesterday? That is the basic of the skin. We have read about the epidermis, little bit about dermis, as well as subcutaneous tissue. Now today we are starting a series of appendageal disorders, and today mainly we will focus our discussion on the hairs, which is a very important. So can we revise okay, so Sunil, I was not thinking of revision today, but it's okay. I can, have a quick revision for all those who have just joined my class. So we have discussed about the epidermis, dermis, and the subcutaneous, which are the three layers of the skin. In epidermis, it is made up of 4 to 5 layers, and starting from top, we have stratum corneum, we have stratum lucidum, then stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and stratum basale. Now here the stratum lucidum, it is not present all over the body. It is present only over palm and sole. I hope Sunil, you are following me because this is only for you. Rest I have discussed with everybody. So we have these 5 layers in our skin, and stratum lucidum is a layer which is present only in the palm and sole. It consists of transitional cells or clear cells or diskeratotic cells. Now, few important point about the stratum basale, that it is the only layer which divide, and hence it is called as stratum germinativum. Just above that we have stratum spinosum, which is also called as prickle cell layer. And the topmost layer, that is the stratum corneum, is also called as the horny cell layer. So epidermis, it is mainly made up of cells. Other than keratinocytes, we have few more cells like melanocytes, which is responsible for pigment formation, and melanocytes are present in the stratum basale. The another cell is Merkel cell, which is mainly responsible for the touch sensation, and it is present again in the basal layer. The third type of cell which is present in the epidermis is the Langerhans cell, which is present in stratum spinosum, and the function is the antigen presenting cell, or it is the first line in the defense of the skin. So this was the little bit about the epidermis. The next we have dermis. In dermis, the most important component formed is by collagen as well as the elastic fibers, which provides the skin the tensile strength as well as elasticity. Other than collagen, we have few cells like mast cells, fibroblast. Now, little bit about the collagen, that type 1 collagen is present in a maximum number, and type 3 collagen is the second most common. Just below the dermis, we have a fat cell component which is called as the adipose tissue. And here we mainly discuss with respect to paniculitis, which is of two types, that is septal paniculitis as well as lobular paniculitis. So I hope this was a very quick revision to what we have discussed in my previous two class. You can anytime go back, Sunil, and see the recorded sessions. Okay, so it's not that if you miss the class, the live class, you cannot see it. You can anytime go back, see the recorded session. You can get the PDFs also. And if you have any doubts, you can ask me in my upcoming classes. Okay, so I am done with the revision. Now starting with the today's topic, that is the appendageal disorder. And the first thing, the first flashcard of today is the hair. Now it is a very, very important topic, that is the hair, because I've seen that this time also in AIMS exam, in JIPMER exam, I've seen a question from hair. Okay, so first discussing little bit about the anatomy of the hair. Now this is the longitudinal section. It means if we cut the hair in the longitudinal part, and this is the horizontal section. So first we will discuss the anatomy with respect to the horizontal section. Now in horizontal section, in the center we have the hair shaft. Now hair shaft, outside the hair shaft, we have something called as inner root sheet, and outside the inner root sheet, we have outer root sheet, and outside the root sheet, we have dermal sheath. Am I clear to all of you? The central is the hair shaft. Surrounding the hair shaft, we have inner root sheet, then we have outer root sheet, and then we have dermal sheet. So can you appreciate this is the central part, the surrounding it inner root sheet, then outer root sheet, and the last part is the dermal sheet. Now, what about this hair shaft? Now, please have a look over this picture. Hair shaft is further divided into three parts. The centralmost part is called as the medulla. The outside to the medulla, we have cortex, and a thin part surrounding the cortex is called as the cuticle. So, I hope I am clear to all of you. Okay, so I am describing this part. The center is medulla, then outside medulla we have cortex, and then we have the cuticle. Okay, so please give me a thumbs up if you all understood this part. Please give me a thumbs up. Okay, so this is very clear to you. Now coming to the inner root sheet. Inner root sheet is further divided into three parts, starting from the innermost to the outermost. Now the innermost part is again named as cuticle. So you might be wondering that, ma'am, you have told that cuticle is present in the hair shaft. Now again, why you are saying that we have a cuticle? So we have two cuticle. One is the one which is present in the hair shaft, and the next one is called as inner root sheet cuticle. So I hope I'm clear to all of you. We have two cuticles, one with the hair shaft and another is called as inner root sheet cuticle. The next is we have something called as the Huxley layer. And outside the Huxley layer, we have Henle layer. Now, why I'm telling you in detail? This is because we have got a question in your exam. This is, I think, FMGE or DNB, I forgot, but you have got an exam. So, Monica, there is no much difference in the cuticle, but you have two layers. So, the innermost is called as the cuticle and the just outside is called as the inner root sheet cuticle. There is no much difference in both. I hope you understood. Okay. So we have three layers from inside to outside, that is the cuticular layer, the Huxley layer and Henle layer. So they have asked in the DNB or FMG exam, the outermost layer of the inner root sheet is. So students got confused between these two layers, whether it was Huxley or where it was Henle layer. So there is a mnemonic, you can remember that here we have E. So the Henle layer is present at to the external part. So I hope you understood what I'm trying to explain. Okay. So in the FMG question, they have asked you that the outermost part or outermost layer of inner root sheath was Hexley layer, Henle layer, or the cuticle layer. So the answer is Henle, and the mnemonic to remember is you remember E. E means the external part, so Henle is present in the external part. So please give me a thumbs up if you understood the three layers of the inner root sheath. Okay, now outside to inner root sheath, we have outer root sheath, and then we have the dermal sheaths. So this is two important things which you should remember, and this can be repeated again. The next is the longitudinal section. Okay, so before discussing about the longitudinal section, I want to tell you something about the medullary index. Can anyone tell me what is the medullary index? Anybody? This is also a question in your I think this was the question in the PGI exam. I don't remember exactly, but there was a question on the medullary index. So medullary index is the ratio of medulla with the cortex. Now anybody can tell me? So what is the medullary index? I want all of you to please try to answer it. What is the medullary index here? Yes, so I think I'm already with the answer. Harinath, Shashank, Annapurna. So medullary index in case of human, it is 1:3. That is one part of the medulla and three part of the cortex. This is a very important part. And the next is in case of animals, they can ask you. So it is 1:2. So Shashank, you are absolutely right. So this is recently asked in an exam. So that is the reason why we are giving this for the fresh card today. Okay. So this is a new thing, and you can get this question in your NEET PG also. So I hope everybody understood what is the medullary index. So that is the ratio of the medulla is to cortex, which is 1:3 in case of humans, and it is 1:2 in case of animals. Now coming to the longitudinal section. So this is the longitudinal section of the hair. Now in longitudinal section, you can see a long portion of the hair. So this is called as the hair shaft. And the next part is the lower part is called as the hair bulb. So I hope you all are clear. That is the hair shaft and the hair bulb. Now this red color structure is a muscle which is called as the erector pili muscle. Now what is the function of erector pili? Can anybody tell me what is the function? Why we are reading about the erector pili? So yes, so the function of the erector pili, that is it causes the goosebump, that is the in response to the sympathetic stimulus. The another function is there is something called as the upper segment and the lower segment. So at the level of the attachment of the one second. So at the level of the attachment, so this is the part where the erector pili is attached. So it divides the hair into two parts, that is the upper segment and the lower segment. Okay. So Shashank, isthmus and stem you can say, but it is mainly called as the upper segment as well as the lower segment. So there was a question in your previous year NEET PG that which structure divides the hair into upper and the lower segment, and the answer is the erector pili. The other options were the sebaceous gland. There were few options like the Adamson fringe and other options, but the correct answer was the erector pili. So erector pili divides the hair shaft into two parts, that is the upper segment and lower segment. I hope it is clear to all of you. Now there is one more structure which is called as the sebaceous gland. So I'm making the sebaceous gland. This is attached something like this. Okay, so this is the sebaceous gland and it is opening into the hair follicle. Now this opening of the sebaceous gland, it divides the hair follicle into the upper part and the lower part. This upper part is called as infundibulum. Okay, and the lower part is called as isthmus. Okay, so this is a very important question. The sebaceous gland opening divide the hair into upper infundibulum and lower isthmus, while the erector pili divides the hair into the upper segment and lower segment. If this is clear to all of you, please give me a thumbs up so that I can proceed ahead. Okay. Yes. So this is very important, and these are very important small things which students usually forget in the exam. So please try to remember it, because you can get one-liners, especially in your NEET PG exams or your DNB exams. Now another important point is this is called as the hair bulb. Hair bulb mainly consists of the capillary loop. So that is the blood supply of the hair. Now here, just below the attachment of the erector pili, you have a raised structure, and this is called as Adamson's fringe. Okay, and what is the role of Adamson fringe? Here it consists of the stem cells. So very important, they can ask you an exam that where are the stem cells present. So they are not present in the hair bulb, they are present in the Adamson's fringe, which is present little above the hair bulb. If I'm clear to you, please give me a thumbs up. These are very, very important points and you will get confused. I will tell you in my next few slides that what is the importance of the Adamson's fringe, what is the importance of the dermal papilla, what happens if there is damage to the fringe or the dermal papilla. So I hope I'm clear to all of you. Okay. So now going to our second slide, and this slide is very clear. And yes, Shashank, the pluripotent cells or the stem cells are present in the Adamson's fringe, which is present just above the dermal papilla. Now going to the second slides, that is the type of the hair. Very, very important, very, very important. I've seen a question from the type of the hairs. Yes, so it is present at the junction only. So Sunil, you are right. It is present at the junction of the upper and the lower segment. Okay. So that is a part not exactly present below at the bulb. This is present just above the hair bulb. Okay. So that is at the junction of the upper and the lower segment. Am I clear to you, Sunil? Please give me a thumbs up if you understood. Okay. So now coming to the type of the hairs, we have recently got a question and I think I've posted that question in my next slide. We have in adult life, we have two type of hairs, that is the vellus hair and the terminal hair. So please concentrate over this picture. This hair is called as the terminal hair and this hair is called as the vellus hair. Now they can ask you the difference. The difference is the vellus hair are the short hairs as compared to the terminal hair. Now what do you mean by the short hair? The short hair means the vellus hair will not extend up to the subcutis. Okay, it will remain somewhere in the upper dermis only, while the terminal hair will reach up to the subcutis. So this is the first difference. The second important difference is these are unpigmented hairs. It means that vellus hair are non-pigmented, that is they are white color or light color. So this is again a very important part, while the terminal hair, these are pigmented cells. And yes, Shrishta and Annapurna have come up with another option, that is presence of medulla. So the vellus hair are non-medullated. And a very important point I want to tell you that the pigment or the color to the hair is because of the medulla which is present inside the hair follicle. So as there is no medulla, so the vellus hair are unpigmented as compared to the terminal hair which are pigmented. The third important point is the vellus hair are present before the puberty, while the terminal hairs are present after the puberty as well as before the puberty in the scalp. Okay. So the scalp hair before the puberty, and in case of adult, that is in case of male, in the beard area after the puberty, you can see the presence of the terminal hairs. So the terminal hairs are mainly present over the adults, while the vellus hair are present before the puberty. And this is a very important difference. So Monica, the graying of hair is completely different. The graying of hair is seen in case of terminal hairs only, but there we have no pigment in those cells. While the vellus hair is something very different. I'll tell you when I'll teach you AGA, that is androgenic alopecia, there is something called as a miniaturization of the hair. Now, what is miniaturization? There is conversion of the terminal hair into the vellus hair. I will teach you when I will deal with the androgenic alopecia. But now, right now, you don't confuse it with graying. The gray hair or the white hair are terminal hairs only, but without the pigment. Okay. The next is the something called as the lanugo hair. Now, what are these lanugo hair? The lanugo hairs are seen in the fetal life, that is in utero. Now, these are the fine hairs, pigmented hairs, and long hairs. So this can be seen inside when the baby is inside the womb or inside the Shrishta, I have not put any picture for the clinical picture for the lanugo or vellus or the terminal hair. I'll try to put up the picture on my next class and I'll show you by showing it by a picture. Okay. So right now I have no picture about the lanugo, vellus or the terminal hair. But these are some important differences and why we are reading it because of this question. So I want all of you to please solve this question. Very, very important question. And I hope after solving this question, you'll understand why we were discussing the previous flashcard. So the incorrect statement about the hairs are, melanin is absent in the vellus hair. The vellus hair depth extend up to the subcutis. The medulla is thicker in case of terminal hair, and lanugo hair is unmedulated hair. So I think I have so many students who have marked it right. That is, we have Upadhyay, Anshul, Vijay, Jitesh, Midhum, we have Shai and Ilakai. So you all are right. The correct answer is option number 2. Now, many of you got confused between option number 4, that is, lanugo hair are unmedulated. So, this is not a true statement. So, please have a look over this picture. I've told you that the lanugo hair are pigmented hair, and the pigment to the hair is because of the medulla. So, if it is pigmented, there should be presence of medulla. So, I hope you are clear with option number 4, that is, lanugo hair are unmedulated. This is absolutely right. The medulla is thicker in case of the terminal hair. Yes, this is also right, because the vellus hair, there is no medulla, so it is thicker in case of the terminal hair. The next is the melanin is absent in vellus hair, and this is also right, as it is unpigmented, so there will be absence of the melanin in case of the vellus hair. So I think you all are clear with this. The correct answer is option number 2. The vellus hair depth extend to subcutis? No, the depth extend only up to the upper dermis, while the terminal hair as well as lanugo hair both will go and extend up to the subcutis. So this is very, very important part. Okay, so going to the next slide, please give me a thumbs up if everybody understood what I'm trying to say. Okay, now coming to something called as hair cycle. So our hairs in our body, they usually go in a cycle. Now what is this cycle? The cycle consists of mainly or broadly 3 stages. Now what are these stages? Starting from first, that is the anagen hair. So this is called as anagen A. The next is the catagen, that is C. And the third one is the telogen. So yes, Shai Sasang, you're absolutely right. We have anagen, catagen and telogen phase. Now what is anagen phase? Anagen phase is called as the growth phase. So the growth phase is responsible for the total length of the hair. Very, very important. I've seen recently a question asked in, I think, one of the central exams, that which phase of the hair is responsible for the length of the hair. So you have different length in different individual, and this is because of the anagen phase. So in few individuals, those who have longer hair, they have a longer length or longer anagen phase, while in few individuals, those who have a shorter hairs, they have shorter anagen phase. So I hope all of you understood. The length of the hair depends upon the anagen phase. So this is called as the growth phase. Now anagen phase, it remains for 3 years, and the range is almost 2 to 6 years. I hope you understood. So the anagen phase will remain for 3 years, and here the hairs are in the active growth phase. The next is something called as the catagen phase, which remains in the body for 3 weeks. So this is very, very important. First is 3 years. The catagen phase is 3 weeks. Now why it is called as catagen phase? Because here there is catabolic changes which is occurring in the hair follicle. So can you see the catabolic changes, or there is cessation of the division at the hair bulb? So that is the reason it is called as the catagen phase. And in this stage, there is no growth. The hair will stop growing, and here the process of detachment will start. So the catagen phase is the second phase of 3 weeks. The third one is something called as the telogen phase, which is called as the resting phase, and this will remain for 3 months. So what happens? The process of the catabolism will start. It will remain for 3 weeks, and after 3 weeks, the hair will remain in a resting phase. And after resting phase, there is another phase which is called as the exogen phase. Okay, the exogen phase is called as a phase where the hair shades off. So catagen phase in alopecia areata. So Sunil, I'm not able to understand what you are trying to say. So alopecia areata, I will tell you in my next slide. What is alopecia areata? It is one of the example of alopecia, that is the hair loss. In alopecia areata, you have autoimmunity formed against the hair bulb. So you have antibody, that is, you have lymphocytes, T lymphocytes, which are formed against the hair bulb. Now, because of this, there will be cessation of the hair growth. And because of the cessation of the hair growth, the hair will not develop. So that is completely different to what you have the catagen phase. I hope you understood what I'm trying to say, Sunil. Okay. So I will tell you when we will discuss about the alopecia areata. For now, you just need to know about the hair cycle sequence. So the first question which you will get from this side is the sequence. So this is the sequence, that is ACT. So that is act. You can get it with any mnemonic. I have seen many individuals having their own mnemonics. So the sequence is ACT, that is act. In PGI, I have seen one more option, that is the exogen phase. So you can get one more E here, and then after E you have again anagen phase. So this is the cell or the hair cycle sequence. Very important. Please note down. So this is the first question which you will get. The second question which you will get from this slide is the duration. So anagen is 3 years, catagen is 3 weeks, and telogen is 3 months. Okay, so please don't get confused between the catagen, that is a week, and telogen, that is 3 months. So that is the another question which you will get from this slide. Okay, so I hope this is clear to all of you. So does the hair cycle stop permanently? So in which condition you are asking this? In which dermatological diseases you are asking about this hair cycle stop? Please, Monica, specify. So the hair cycle keep on continuing. Why we have daily hair loss? The daily hair loss is because there are some cells or some hairs in our scalp which are exfoliating daily, because they have entered into the exogen phase. So alopecia, Monica, I'll tell you, just wait for some more time. I will tell you each and everything about alopecia, what happens in alopecia, what is the basic mechanism. Alopecia is a very broad term. Alopecia means hair loss. It can be because of some diseases which have permanent hair loss. It can be because of diseases which have temporary hair loss. Okay, so we cannot just classify it as the hair cycle stops permanently. I will tell you in my next few slides, but for now you just need to know about the hair cycle sequence as well as the duration. One more questions which you will get, I've asked that question in my today's Telegram group, that is on the histopathology. The telogen hair will give you a club shaped appearance. Okay, so this you can get a question, they can show you a picture. So those who are on my Telegram group, I have shown you a picture today, that is a club hair. So please make a note that you can get a question in your NEET PG or your upcoming central exam, a picture of a hair, and they can ask you that in which cycle this hair belong. Okay, so you have a club shaped hair, so you can appreciate that there is a club shaped hairs, and this is because of the hair bulb. Yes, so that is because of the hair bulb, it becomes the club shaped. Okay, so I hope I'm clear to all of you. Now please answer this question. I think after answering this question you'll understand. So welcome all the students, those who have joined my class recently. We are discussing the appendageal disorders or the basic anatomy of the appendages. Today we will deal mainly about the hair, and we have discussed about the anatomy of the hair, that is the longitudinal as well as the transverse section. So now students are getting confused. I have only 25% of students who have marked it right. So Bharti, Shashank, Viraj, Gayatri, Smith, I want all of you to please read the question carefully, because here you will get confused. So the correct answer to this question is option number 2, that is 50% of the hair are in the anagen phase. No, it is around 80 to 90% of the hairs which are in the anagen phase. So this was another question which we will get from this question, that 80% of the total hairs belong to the anagen phase. The 15% of your hairs, the remaining 15 or 10 to 15% of the hair belong to the telogen phase, and remaining 5 to 10% belong to the catagen phase. Okay, so this is very important. This is very, very important for you. So see, Shashank, the range can vary in all the different books, but for now you need to know that it is around 80 to 90%. Here it can be up to 5 to 10%, and here it is 10 to 15%. Okay. Okay, so the correct answer is option number 2, that is 80% of the hair belong to the anagen phase. Option number 1, anagen is the period of active growth. This is absolutely right. Catagen is the involutory phase. Yes, this is also right. And the telogen is the period between the catagen and the next telogen. Yes. So Shrishta, it is absolutely right. So they are asking that telogen is a phase between the catagen and the next anagen. That is absolutely right. I hope you understood option number D. Please read it again. The telogen is a period between the catagen and the next telogen. So, sorry, next anagen. So this is the catagen and this is the next anagen. Okay. And exogen, see, I've told you that these are the main slide. So if they have not, exogen is a phase where the hair shed off completely. So in few condition they have not considered it as a hair cycle. Okay, so don't get confused with the exogen. This is a phase where the cell gets or the hair gets shed off. Okay, so I hope I can solve your question. Shrishta, please give me a thumbs up. Okay. Okay, so now coming to the alopecia. Now, before going to the scarring or non-scarring, I want to tell you something about the alopecia. So we have divided alopecia. Now, first of all, we have divided hair disorders into two groups, that is the alopecia and hypertrichosis. Now, can anybody tell me what is the difference between two? So in alopecia, there is loss of hair. I think this is very clear from the terminology. And the next is hypertrichosis, that is there is increase in hair. Now there is one more terminology which is used in hypertrichosis, that is, can you tell me what is another terminology which is used in increase hair? That is hirsutism. Did you ever heard about this term? So Annapurna is already with the answer. Now I want you to please tell me what is the difference between the hypertrichosis and hirsutism. Both of them are literally meaning that there is increase in the hair, but there is a very very important difference between the hypertrichosis and hirsutism. Any one of you, please try to answer here. I want an interactive class. I don't want that only there should be a one side talk. No, I want you to see. So Subhash is telling that is dystrichiasis a type of hypertrichosis. So dystrichiasis is a, this means abnormal and trichiasis means hair. So abnormal hair can be alopecia also and hypertrichosis also. So you cannot label that dystrichiasis as hypertrichosis. So I hope I am clear to you. Okay. Okay. Now the next question was. So, Shrishta, hormonal, please be more specific. What do you mean by hormonal? Monica and Shrishta, you are with incomplete answers. Okay, so Shashank have told me that hirsutism is a hair growth male pattern. Okay, so it is, hirsutism is whenever you have hair growth in the abnormal site or the hormonal dependent sites. For example, in case of the beard area in the females. So in the beard area over the females, this is the site where usually females will not get the hairs. But because of the hormonal abnormality, there is hairs over the chin part, over the upper lip, over the chest. So whenever you have increased hair over the hormonal dependent sites, then it is called as hirsutism. And while the presence of hair anywhere else in the body, whether it is on the dependent side or non-dependent side, then it is called as hypertrichosis. So I hope I am clear to all of you. Okay, so yes, Annapurna, now you are right. That is the chest, the shoulders, the upper lip, the lower part, the forehead. So these are all the hormone dependent side. So if you have excess hair over these parts, then it is called as hirsutism, while hypertrichosis is a literal meaning that presence of increased hair at any part of the body. Okay, so this we are done with the hypertrichosis or the increased hair. Now discussing about the alopecia, which literally means that is loss of hairs. Now we have divided alopecia into two types, that is scarring alopecia and non-scarring alopecia. We can also divide the loss of hair again into two types, that is diffuse or localized. So these are just the method to divide the loss of hair. So we can divide the loss of hair into diffuse or localized. We can divide the loss of hair into scarring and non-scarring. Now, I will tell you in detail about scarring and non-scarring, but before going to diffuse and localized, and there is one more terminology which is called as patterned hair loss. I want all of you to give me at least one example to each of this. So please start with the localized cause of the hair loss. Only one example. I don't want the full list. I want only one cause of the localized. Localized means only a single patch or only over a particular area. It can be over the scalp, it can be over the beard area, over the mustache area. Yes, so Annapurna and Vijay are absolutely right. The classical example is alopecia areata. And I'm telling you that this is the classical example, but we have a whole list of the hair losses, and you all are telling me the correct answers here. So we have alopecia areata, which comes with the hair loss. Monica, pityriasis versicolor. No, pityriasis versicolor, it is a superficial fungal infection. I got you confused with something else. Okay, so please recheck. Pityriasis versicolor is completely different entity. So the one example which we are dealing is alopecia areata. The next is the diffuse hair loss. I want one example of diffuse hair loss. Yes, Annapurna, tinea capitis is an example of localized alopecia. And Shashank, you're also right. Trichotillomania can be considered as an example of both the localized as well as diffuse. Okay, but here we are discussing the classical example of the localized. So here it is the alopecia areata. And yes, Shrishta is with the answer. So diffuse hair loss, the classical example is telogen effluvium. What is telogen effluvium? What is anagen effluvium? I will tell you each and everything. Don't worry. This is a very interesting class. You don't worry. I'll tell you each and everything. Okay. So the classical example is of the diffuse hair loss is telogen effluvium. Now, can you tell me the example of the patterned hair loss? And I think Vijay is already with the answer. That is the androgenic alopecia. So the classical example is androgenic alopecia or female pattern hair loss. So I will discuss each and everything in detail in my classes. Don't worry. I'll tell you the pathogenesis, what happens, how it happens, what exactly is the change which is occurring. But if you all are clear with this slide, please let me know and give me a thumbs up. I want all the 40 students, those who are listening, I want all the thumbs up. Okay? Okay. Now discussing about the non-scarring alopecia. So as I've told you that we have divided the alopecia into two broad groups, that is the non-scarring as well as the scarring alopecias. Now why it is called as non-scarring? So non-scarring, the terminology is given whenever you see little or no inflammation. Okay, so whenever you have little or no inflammation, then we label it as non-scarring alopecia. But you have exceptions also. Don't worry, I'll tell you what exactly happens. Now, in case of non-scarring alopecia, there is no scar which is seen, and there is a classical thing, that is we can see the follicular opening. Follicular opening, it means that we have loss of hair, but still you can see the empty hair follicle. So this is the empty hair follicle. There is loss of the hair, but you can see the empty hair follicle. So please concentrate over this picture. Can you appreciate these black dots? So these are the empty hair follicle. Welcome Akash, welcome to my class. I'm discussing about the non-scarring alopecia. So the difference between the scarring and non-scarring is, in case of non-scarring alopecia, there is presence of follicular opening. That is, you can see the presence of empty follicles. Okay, while in case of scarring alopecia, you cannot see any follicular openings. So this is a very important question. I want all of you to please make a note. So you can see the follicular opening in case of scarring alopecia. This is the one difference. The second is there is no scarring or no wrinkling which is seen. So there is no scarring or no wrinkling of the skin. So when there is no scarring, there is no wrinkling, there is always a chance that it will get reversed. So it is a reversible cause of alopecia. Okay? I hope all of you understood. So the non-scarring is most of the time reversible, but again I'm telling there are few exceptions also. But for now you just need to know that there are follicular opening, there is no scarring, there is no wrinkling, and it is most of the time reversible. Now, why is it so? Why the non-scarring alopecias are reversible? The reason is, as I've told you that this is the follicle. I'm very sorry, my drawing is not that good, but you can appreciate that this is the hair follicle. This is the bulge area. And I've told you that just above the bulge area, we have an area which is called as the Adamson's fringe, which consists of the stem cells. Remember? So what happens in case of non-scarring alopecia? We have damage to the part which is present below the hair stem, that is the hair bulb. So even if we have the presence of inflammation, the damage occurs to the hair bulb. So there is no damage to the stem cells. So the stem cells will go and form the hair follicle again. So there will be reversible changes. I hope you understood. Please let me know if you all understood, because this is very very important concept. If you will not understand this, you will not understand the diseases which we are going to read in my next few slides. So why there is irreversible damage, or why there is reversible damage? This is because there is no damage to the stem cells, because the damage here is at the level which is lower part, that is at the level of the hair bulb. And the classical example of presence of the inflammatory mediators at the hair follicle or hair bulb is alopecia areata. Okay, so I will tell you in detail in my next slide that the classical presence of the inflammatory mediators at the hair bulb is seen in case of alopecia areata. So this is, I hope this is very clear. This is a very important flashcard. Okay, so see, if these are all the brief discussion which I am doing, if you want to read this or discuss this in detail, please join my subscription, or please get the subscription of Unacademy. Trust me, we have very good educators here. We have very good educators of pathology, medicine, gynae, radiology. So trust me, after taking the subscription of Unacademy, you will not regret it. And we have now come up with many good courses. We have 6-month courses, we have 1-year courses, those targeting the NEET PG 2021 2022. So please come join Unacademy. Okay, so trust me, it will help you in cracking your upcoming exam. Okay, so use my referral code, that is Cheshta 10. So see, Shashank is a new, newcomer in our Unacademy, and he is already very happy. So please, I want all of you to use my referral code for subscription to get additional discount. And here on Unacademy, we personalize the education profile for each and every students according to their needs, according to their requirements. Okay, so I hope all of you understood. So we are done with this slide. Going to the next slide. Okay, so we are done with this non-scarring alopecia. Now going towards the scarring alopecia. So as I've told, in scarring alopecia, there is no hair follicle. Okay, so there is no hair follicle, which is a very very important thing, and it differentiates it from the non-scarring alopecia. Here we have presence of scarring as well as wrinkling, which is seen. Okay, so can you appreciate the scarring as well as wrinkling in this photo? So here, if you appreciate clearly, you can see the depression, that is the atrophy or the scarring of the skin, and you can see that there is no small dots, which is classical of the non-scarring alopecia. And what is the reason? Here it is mainly irreversible, and the reason for irreversibility is what? That is, there is involvement of the hair bulb. So whenever there is, there is involvement of the stem cells. So whenever there is involvement of the stem cells, it will result in fibrosis as well as permanent damage. So I hope all of you understood the difference between the scarring as well as non-scarring alopecia. Please everybody give me a thumbs up, and all those students who have joined me now, you can go back and read the recorded session if you have not understood. Okay, okay. So now coming up to the causes of scarring as well as non-scarring alopecia. Now first we will discuss about the causes of non-scarring alopecia. So can you tell me what are the causes of non-scarring alopecia? So this is very important, the causes of non-scarring alopecia. So it is mainly alopecia areata, which we have discussed. Yes, so it is an example of very classical example of alopecia, non-scarring alopecia. Then we have something called as androgenic alopecia. Anybody else want to add? We have anagen effluvium, and then we have telogen effluvium. Yes, we have tractional alopecia, or we can also call as tractional alopecia. We have trichotillomania. Anybody else want to add anything? Yes, we have tinea capitis. Now about the tinea capitis, as Gayatri have come up with tinea capitis. So tinea capitis can be included in both, that is the scarring as well as non-scarring alopecia. Because yes, Sai, you're absolutely right. We have two type of tinea capitis, that is inflammatory type and non-inflammatory type. So the non-inflammatory type will present with non-scarring alopecia, while inflammatory type will present with scarring alopecia. So I hope all of you understood what I'm trying to say. So tinea capitis can be included in both of them. Okay, and similar to tinea capitis, I think somebody have told about the lupus, that is the SLE. So in SLE also there are examples of both scarring and non-scarring alopecia. especially in case of chronic SLE, that is in case of DLE, we get to see non-scarring alopecias. Sorry, we get to see scarring, and I'm very sorry, here we have scarring alopecia, while in case of acute LE or SLE, we tend to see something called as lupus hair. So lupus hair or the non-scarring alopecia. So I hope you understood both these things. Please give me a thumbs up. So tinea capitis can be included in both and SLE can be included in both. The DLE will present with scarring and the lupus hair will have non-scarring alopecia. Okay. Now, other examples. Yes. So Shashank have come up with a very important thing, that is the vitamin and mineral deficiencies. So this is also again a very important cause of non-scarring alopecia. So Shashank, can you mention a vitamin which causes the deficiency of the vitamin causes the alopecia? Any one vitamin? Okay, biotin. Okay, but I want a specific vitamin. Zinc, it is a micronutrient. That is not a vitamin. Yes, Gayatri is absolutely right. And Gayatri, can you be more precise? Which type of vitamin D deficiency? Can you be more precise? We have two type of, yes, we have rickets and we have two type of rickets, that is type 1 and type 2. So can you mention that which type of, yes, so that is the type 2 which has the alopecia areata. Okay. So this is very important. I will be dealing this when I take the class on nutritional deficiency. Okay. So I hope you are clear with the causes of the non-scarring alopecia. Very, very important list. And I'm sorry for my handwriting. I don't have a good handwriting. Yes, Kevin, again. So thyroid disease is also presents both the hypo and hyper can have alopecia, that is the loss of the hair. So both hypo and hyper can present. So we have a very long list, and if I have not come up with anything, you can just add it to it. Stress can be a cause, but that is not a direct cause. So you can add the stress also as a list. But for now, I think this is the enough list. Okay. Now discussing about the scarring or the cicatricial alopecia. Now scarring alopecia or cicatricial alopecia is further divided into two groups, that is the primary cause and the secondary cause. Now what do you mean by primary cause? When you have a direct inflammatory process or inflammatory mediators acting on the hairs, it means that you have primary hair defects or you have primary hair disorders. Now, the inflammatory disorders are further classified into the lymphocytic as well as neutrophilic. So, you should not go much in detail, but if they ask you in the exam, you just remember this chart, that inflammatory process can have lymphocytic infiltrate and neutrophilic infiltrate. In lymphocytic, you have an example which is called as lichen planopilaris, which is a variant of LP. I will teach you when I will discuss about lichen planus. And the next is discoid lupus, which I have just now discussed, that it is a chronic form of SLE which presents with scarring alopecia. In case of neutrophilic, we have few bacterial infections like dissecting folliculitis of scalp, not going in detail. Yes, so just the causes is fine. You don't have to go in detail because we have not seen any questions, which has been asked further. I want to mention one thing about the scarring alopecia cause. There is something called as pseudopallard of Brooke. Pseudopallard of Brooke. Okay. So this is a idiopathic cause. The cause is not known about the pseudopallard of Brooke. But why I am discussing it here? Because I've seen a question where they've asked you that the classical pattern of the pseudopallard of Brooke is called as, what is it called as? Anybody can name that? What is the, yes, it is called as footprint on snow appearance. Okay, the footprint, I'm very sorry about the spelling, footprint on the snow appearance. So I think this is only the thing which you should know about the pseudopallard of Brooke. Rest you should not know because I have not seen any questions. You just need to know that the etiology is not known, and on histopathology it will on clinical it will appear that there is a footprint on the snow appearance. Okay. So I do not have any clinical picture right now. I'm very sorry for that. I can show this picture on my next class. I hope you understood. This is the only question which is required for this disease. Okay. So the next is about the secondary causes. The secondary causes is infections. So we have discussed the fungal infection, that is tinea capitis. And here we have something called as the inflammatory variety. Okay. Yes, Shashank, it is an example of scarring alopecia. Pseudopalate of Burak is an example of scarring alopecia. Okay, so here also you can, yes. Now in case of infections, you have tinea capitis, and that is the inflammatory variety. And what is the example? The Favus and the Kirion. I'm not going in detail. I will teach you in my class on the fungal infection. We have few infiltrative disorders like sarcoidosis, metastatic cancers, and traumatic disorders like burn. So all these diseases will cause the scarring alopecia. So you just need to know the names. You don't have to go in detail. Okay. So I hope I'm clear to all of you. Please give me a thumbs up. All the students, all the 50 students, I want all the thumbs up. Okay. Now coming to the next part, that is anagen effluvia. Okay. Now what is anagen effluvia? We have discussed in the initial part that the hair follows a cycle. And what is the cell cycle sequence? Please repeat with me. It is anagen phase, then we have catagen phase. I'm very sorry. Anagen phase, we have catagen phase, and then we have telogen phase. So the one who have told CAT, that is wrong. The phase is ACT. And yes, ACTEA, but you don't have to mention E because it is just the exfoliative phase. For mainly you need to know that we have three phases, that is anagen phase, the catagen phase, and the telogen phase. And among these three, the anagen phase is the growing phase. Here we have dividing cells. Okay. Now what happens, especially in those having chemotherapy, that is the patient of cancer, those who is receiving the chemotherapy, we know that chemotherapy will go and act on the dividing cells. So it will mainly affect the dividing cells in the anagen phase. It can also affect the dividing cells of the gut. So we will see the effect over these areas. Now what happens when there is effect on the growing cell? There is sudden stoppage or sudden insult of the division. So this will lead to stopping of the division of the cells at this part, that is the basal part, and it will leave the hair, it will break the hair at the lower part. So we will have a broken hair, but these hairs have intact hair follicles. So when the chemotherapy is withdrawn, there is again regrowth of the hair. I hope you understood. So yes, Shashank, you can see the diffuse hair loss here in case of anagen effluvium. It mainly occur in those who are taking chemotherapy where there is sudden insult on the papillary region, because here we have dividing cells. So there will be sudden stoppage of the hair in the anagen phase itself. So there is sudden stoppage of the anagen phase, and there will be loss of the hair in the anagen phase. So this is a very important question. I want all of you to please mark it down. Okay. So there is loss of the hair in the anagen phase itself. And why I am discussing it again and again, because we will read in case of telogen effluvium, there we have the shedding of the hair in the telogen phase. I hope you understood. Please give me a thumbs up, all of you. Okay, so here we have defects in the growing phase, that is the anagen phase, and the hair will break and will shed off in the anagen phase itself. The second important phase, as we have intact hair follicle, so if we stop the chemotherapy, the hair will regrow again. So it is a reversible damage. Okay. No, so the hair are not permanently lost. It is just that there is loss or there is injury to the dividing cell. So for some time when the chemotherapy are acting or the chemotherapeutic agents are acting, at that time there will be no division, and hence there will be no anagen phase, but you have intact hair follicle. So after some time when the chemotherapeutic agent will go, the hair will regrow. So yes, Shashank, you're right. I hope you understood. Okay, so please give me a thumbs up if Sunil understood. Okay, now coming to the next part, that is I'm very sorry, this is the telogen effluvium. So this is wrongly written as anagen effluvium. This I'm talking about telogen effluvium. Now, as the name suggests, effluvium means loss of hair, and here we have loss of hair of the telogen. Now, what happens? We have told you that the anagen phase, it remains for 3 years. Then we have something called as catagen phase, which remains for 3 weeks. And then we have telogen hair. Then we have telogen phase, which remains for 3 months. Now, what happens in few chronic conditions? What are these chronic conditions? For example, in case of, say, in case of pregnancy, that is post-pregnancy, In case of chronic illness, I'm sorry, my pen tab is again not working. For example, chronic illness like typhoid. Okay, so any of the chronic illness like malaria. So whenever an individual suffer with a chronic illness or pregnancy, what happens? The anagen phase will enter into the catagen phase. Now we have discussed that the anagen phase go for 3 years. But what happens when there is chronic diseases? The anagen phase, instead of remaining there for 3 years, it will quickly convert into the catagen phase. That is, there will be short anagen phase. Yes, so Shrishta is absolutely right. We have premature entry of the anagen phase into the catagen phase and then subsequently into the telogen phase. I hope all of you understood. Please give me a thumbs up. This is a very important point you should understood. If anybody has any doubts, please let me know. What happens in case of telogen effluvium? In secondary to some chronic illness or pregnancy, there is premature entering of the anagen phase into catagen and then to telogen. And we know that the time of the telogen phase is 3 months. So there will be hair follicle in after 3 months. So this is very important. Okay, so Monica, after the chronic conditions, there is premature entry. So instead of remaining there for 3 months or for 3 years or 2 to 6 years, the cycle will enter early into the catagen phase. So yes, Sushil, what happens here? The anagen phase will get converted into the catagen phase early. There will be the premature entry. Okay, so there will be no arrest. There will be conversion of the anagen phase into the catagen and then subsequently into the telogen phase. And we have discussed that the telogen phase remains for 3 years. So the patient will complain of hair loss after 3 years of the after the 3 years of the illness. Okay, so 3 months, I'm very sorry, after the 3 months of the illness. So I hope you understood. Please give me a thumbs up if you all understood. So after the chronic condition, there will be conversion of anagen into telogen and hence there will be conversion. So I want all of you to please solve this question and this will help you in understanding this thing better. So a 50-year-old lady diagnosed with the breast carcinoma underwent with the chemotherapy, presents with hair loss after 3 weeks only. So there is early loss of the hair. So the answer will be here. So Bhavna, Bharti, Shrishta, Smith, Anukriti, Annapurna, Anushka, you all are absolutely right. The answer is anagen effluvium. Please don't get confused with telogen effluvium. Okay, telogen effluvium is after 3 months. Here they have given you 2 hints. First is the patient is receiving the chemotherapy. Okay, so that is the first hint. And the next hint which they have given is that the patient has hair loss after 3 weeks. And this is because of the arrest of the hair growth at the anagen phase itself. And there is loss of the hair of the anagen phase. Okay, I hope this is clear to all of you. Okay, so now discussing the last or the next topic of today, that is the androgenic alopecia. Now, as the name suggests, the androgenic alopecia, here there is a role of androgen or the hormones. Okay, so as the name suggests, the androgenic alopecia has a role of hormone. Now, what happens in the presence? We have few receptors which are present on the dermal papillae. We have few receptors which are present on the dermal papillae. So both of these are the questions. They can ask you that the receptor, that is the 5 alpha reductase or type 2 5 alpha reductase, is present at which site? So it is present at the dermal papillae. So what happens? We have 5 alpha reductase enzyme of type 2 which is present over the hair papillae. And what is the role of the 5 alpha reductase? It converts the circulating testosterone into the dihydrotestosterone. And what does the dihydrotestosterone do? It causes the miniaturization of the hair. Now, what is miniaturization? Miniaturization means, we have discussed in my first slide that we have 2 types of hair. One is the vellus hair and another is the terminal hair. Terminal hair are longer hair which extend up to the subcutis. They are dark colored, pigmented, and they have medulla. Now, what happens in miniaturization? There is conversion of the terminal hair into the vellus hair. What is vellus hair? They are short hair, they are fine hair, and they are unpigmented hair. So I hope I'm clear to all of you. So in the presence of hormones, there is miniaturization, that is, there is conversion of the terminal hair into the vellus hair in case of androgenic alopecia. Now, a very important point I want to discuss here is that normally the terminal is to vellus ratio is 8 is to 1. That is, after every 8 hairs, on every 8 hairs, we have one hair, that is the vellus hair. So this terminal is to vellus hair ratio decreases to 4 is to 1 in case of androgenic alopecia. Did you understand why there is decrease in the ratio? Because we have more and more vellus hair. So this is again a very important exam question, that is the terminal is to vellus ratio decreases from 8 is to 1 to 4 is to 1. So I hope this is clear to all of you. I want all the thumbs up. All the students, please give me a thumbs up. Okay, so this is very, very important part, and this is important for you for your upcoming exams also. So all the 50 students, I hope I'm absolutely comfortable with you. Okay. Okay, so this we have discussed. Now about this. So this is a very, very important slide. This slide shows you two type of patterns. So okay, so one more important thing which I forgot to discuss in this slide is, they can ask you in the exam that what about the circulating levels of the testosterone? Are they increase in case of androgenic alopecia? Anybody? Are the increase in the testosterone levels? So the answer is no. The circulating testosterone levels are absolutely normal in case of androgenic alopecia. Then why there is increase in this conversion? So this is because of something called as end organ hypersensitivity. So there is increased sensitivity of 5-alpha reductase, and that is why more and more testosterones are getting converted into dihydroxytestosterone. So I hope all of you understood. This is a very, very important part. So I want all the students to please concentrate that the testosterone levels are normal here. Okay. Now somebody have asked me some question, so I'll go back. And so what was that question? Okay, so Shrishta have asked me how androgen decreases the anagen phase. So Shrishta, what happens? There is conversion of testosterone to dihydroxytestosterone. Now this dihydroxytestosterone, it will go and it will act at the level of hair papillae. And we know that at the level of hair papillae, we have growth factors, we have blood supply. So because of that, there is decreased blood supply, decreased growth factors. This will lead to miniaturization of the hair, and that is responsible for conversion of the terminal hair to the vellus hair. I hope I am clear to you, Shrishta. Okay, so Sunil is again with the answer. Is it a fixed age relation versus genetic, ma'am? So I didn't get your question. What you are trying to say? I think you are trying to say about the age of androgenic alopecia. So please just modify the question. So Akash, what do you want me to explain again? Please, please write the question. What you want me to explain again? Please write in the question. Okay, so about the age, the androgenic alopecia, it usually occur in genetically prone individuals. Okay, so those who have a positive family history. Okay, so wait, Annapurna, I'll tell your answer. First, I want to tell you about the genetic association. So androgenic alopecia usually occurs in those who have genetic predisposition. And about the age, it is usually said that in those who have positive family history, suppose if somebody have a father who is having androgenic alopecia, so it is said that there is occurrence of androgenic alopecia in the son also, and it will usually occurs 2 to 3 years before the father. So it occurs early in case of the adults, that is the progeny. Okay, so end organ sensitivity means that the 5-alpha reductase enzyme which is present in the hair dermal papillae, they are more sensitive. So normally they are not responding to the testosterone, or normally say 30 grams of testosterone is responsible, but these organs get very sensitive. So even the 3 grams or 3 milligrams of testosterone will respond. So I hope you understood. uh, so Akash, I think I'm clear with your doubt. So even the small amount of testosterone, they will respond. Okay, so so is it the same thing as PCOS? So Annapurna, in case of PCOS, we have abnormal hormones which is circulating in the body. So I've told you that in case of androgenic alopecia, the hormonal levels are absolutely normal. In case of PCOS, we see something called as hirsutism. That is not androgenic alopecia. Both are completely different entities. Okay, so please don't get confused between these two. Okay. So, Sunil, see, this is a question which I think I should not answer here. What is the recurrence after transplantation? This is a very different topic, so I'm not discussing it right now. You can ask me on my Telegram group. That is not important for your exam point of view. And as I'm already running out of time, so I'm not discussing it. Okay. I hope I'm clear to you. So yes, Shrishta, it is the androgen plus the end organ hypersensitivity plus the genetic factors which is responsible for the androgenic alopecia. Okay, so I'm clear with the Shrishta's doubt. Sunil, I'm also clear with your doubt. So Kevin, the Hamilton and Norwood, I will discuss. I think today I don't have time. I will discuss that in my tomorrow's class. Okay. So I think I'm clear to all the questions. Anybody I'm not able to answer, you can ask me the question again. So please everybody give me a thumbs up if I can answer your all the questions. Okay. So as somebody has put up the next slide, so I will discuss this next slide also. So please just have a look over this slide. Here we have discussed about the classification. So classification of the hair disorder. So can anybody tell me what is the name given to this, the male pattern hair loss? What is the classification system which we use? Anybody? What is the, yes, so it is the Hamilton classification. And what is the full name? It is the Hamilton Norwood classification. Okay. And in case of female, we have something called as Ludwig's classification. That is the Ludwig's classification. Now, what is the important point to remember in the male as well as the female pattern hair losses? In case of the male pattern, we have something called as recession of the frontal line. So, can you appreciate the frontal hairline have gone back? Okay, so instead of present at this place, it has gone back. So in case of male pattern hair loss, we have frontal or bitemporal recession. Okay, so these are very important words, that is bitemporal recession as well as frontal recession, which is seen. So here we have complete loss of the frontal as well as bitemporal recession. While in case of female pattern, we have something called as central parting type of hair loss. Okay, central parting. So here we have intact frontal line, very very important, and that is the reason I have put it up here. Okay, so yes, Shrishta has shown in the Bala movie, and you have also Ujjada Chaman movie for that. So this is a very important question, and for this slide there is a question. I want all of you to please solve this question, a very very important question, and I'll end my class after this slide. So I want all of you to please answer this question. What is the diagnosis of a male with diffuse hair loss with the maintenance of the frontal scalp? Yes. So the correct answer is given by Bhavna, Shrishta, Harshita, Sugan, Kevin, Jitesh, Sunil. Most of you, I think 70% of you are right. The correct answer here is option number 1. So don't just go and jump to the option number 2, that is male pattern, as it is given that it is a male, so it should be male pattern hair loss. That is not right. Okay, so this is because here they have clearly mentioned that there is maintenance of the frontal hairline, and the maintenance of the frontal hairline is seen in case of female pattern hair loss. So I hope all of you understood. Please give me a thumbs up. I want all these 60 students to give me a thumbs up if you understood. All the 60 students. Yes. So this is very very important aspect of my class, that in case of male pattern hair loss there is recession, while in case of female pattern hair loss there is no recession. Very very important part. I want all of you to please make a note. So I think I should stop for today. I want all of you to please subscribe to Unacademy. We have very good classes. We have very good sessions which are coming up. an important notice I want to make. Please don't go now. A very, very important notice I have to make. So we are coming up with very good sessions. So I want all of you to please find me on an academy on a batch course, that is a hematology batch course. Go to an academy, choose NEET PG, and then go to the subscribe. You can take 1 month subscription or you can take 6 month, 12-month subscription. Please use my referral code, that is Cheshta10. Please use my referral code Cheshta10 to get additional discount, and this will help me in maintaining your upcoming course. And trust me, you will not regret after subscribing to an academy. Okay, we have many good courses coming up, many YouTube sessions which are coming up. Okay, so for those who are new to my class, please go back and see the recorded sessions. So I think I should stop my class. I hope you like my class. If you like my class, please give me reviews, give me ratings. You can give me educational hats also. So thank you, Bharti. If you like my class, I think I should go now. Tata, take care, study hard, and we'll meet soon in my next session.